What is going on, everybody? This is James Krasnerick, and I am back for another episode of Real Steel Sports on Spreaker Web Radio. Now, today's topic for the discussion is one that is more or less causing a train wreck in the NFL playoff picture, and that would be the NFC East, because we have in the NFC East three teams at 5-7: the Philadelphia Eagles, the New York Giants, and the Washington Redskins, and the Dallas Cowboys, who are only a game out despite being 4-8, something that I don't think any of us expected nor thought possible at the start of the season. Now, what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to analyze each team in this division, and try to predict who I think will win the NFC East. I don't know if you noticed, but I titled it the NFC Least by putting the L in parentheses because, spoiler, I do not believe any team from this division will have a winning record when it's all said and done. I believe the NFC East will yield the third team since 2010 and the third team overall after the 2010 Seahawks and the 2014 Panthers to get into the playoffs with a record of under 500. So without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and get started. Now, before I go into any detail, I am going to tell you, just flat out, the Dallas Cowboys are not making the playoffs. Let's just go ahead and say that right now and get that out of the way. Because if you look at the way that their schedule is set up the rest of the way, they are in the worst shape of any of the four teams in this division. They have the worst quarterbacking of any of the four teams in the division, even though Sam Bradford and Kirk Cousins have not exactly been, stars this year. Because look at the Cowboys' schedule. They go to Green Bay this week. Then they host the New York Jets, who played very well this year. They're above 500 and in contention for a playoff spot. They go to Buffalo to take on the Bills, and then they host the Redskins, who are going to probably be fighting for a playoff spot at that point, and are more than likely going to be playing with a sense of poise, which gives the Cowboys a huge disadvantage. Now, I'm going to talk about those games later, but right now, the way I see it, I see Dallas maybe winning one more game. That's about it. Romo being out really hurts that team a lot more than people think it does. So let's go ahead and start with the Redskins. This week they're at Chicago. Looking at the Bears have played very up and down football this year, but when Jay Cutler's gotten hot, the Bears have looked like a playoff contender. They're not going to make the playoffs, but they have played relatively well. Considering they started off the year poorly, so to work their way back to 5 wins is actually kind of impressive considering they did start off the year horribly. I will give Chicago the edge in that because I think Washington going to Chicago is going to be a tough one. I think the Redskins will beat the Bills at home the next week. The Buffalo Bills will be coming to Washington. That'll be a tough game for Buffalo on the road. And Tyrod Taylor, I question let's see if he can continue up this level of play. Then they go to Philadelphia, which I believe will be a loss. Because when you look at the Eagles, you can say what you want about how they've played this year in terms of consistency, and they have kind of been a big drama fest. But what you have to realize about this Eagles team is that they still have the ability to score. And no offense to the Redskins defense, they're not exactly, an ironclad defense. The Eagles, respectable 15th in the league in scoring, and they can run and throw the football. I know Bradford has not had that great of a year. And I know Mark Sanchez has had to fill in, and he hasn't played poorly. But I believe the Eagles are actually kind of underrated in the thick of this. And if I were to say right now, the team that I felt, if I had to pick which team I think could win the division, I'd have to pick Philly, but I'm not going to go there yet. But besides, I don't think Washington's going into Philly and beating them. And then finally, in the season finale, I think Dallas pulls off an upset because their season's shot. They're playing for pride. They've got nothing left to lose. They might as well just go for it. Those kind of teams can be kind of dangerous. And I think that definitely the Cowboys could pull off an upset there. I would not be surprised to see it. So the way I have the Redskins finishing, they are going to finish at 6-10. That's going to be very tough to win the division unless Philly and New York just bottom out. But again, the Cowboys are not winning the division. The next team we have is the Eagles. Now, if you look at them on paper, they're the most complete team. The Giants' defense is far more horrid than the Eagles is. And if you look at the way that the Giants have looked in the end of games, they've just been awful. I mean, if you take away the last 75 seconds of every single game the Giants played this year, they'd be 10-2. This division would have been locked up already. They'd be waiting to see who they played as the 5th seed. Instead, they got to fight just to get in this thing. Now, the one thing that the Eagles have going for them that gives them a huge edge is tiebreakers. Because as of right now, the Eagles have one less division loss than the Giants, which gives them a tiebreaker, even though they're doing less in the conference. Right now, the Redskins have the best Pardon me, I kind of lost my train of thoughts there. Right now, the Redskins have the best conference record of any team in the NFC East at 5-4, compared to the Eagles at 3-6, the Giants at 4-5. And if you just look at the head-to-head percentage, that's why the Eagles have the edge in the Giants, because they routed them earlier in the year 27-7. Now, looking at the Eagles, I think they'll beat the Bills because I think Chip Kelly, I don't look at revenge very much when I think of coaches, but you look at the way that a lot of players have been disgruntled after being sent away from Philadelphia, and I think, LaShawn McCoy is a great example of that. He's going to want to try to stuff in McCoy's face. I think deep down he's kind of want to do it, and I think he's going to get a chance to. Because I know the Bills, they're a good team. They're contending in the AFC East, but if you look at them, their defensive line isn't getting after anybody. They got that high-profile defensive front with guys like Marcel Darius and Mario Williams. And they're just not getting after the quarterback. They have 18 sacks in 12 games. That's abysmal. So Sam Bradford's going to have his chances to throw. Next, they host the Cardinals, and the Cardinals being a team contending for the number 2 seed in the NFC, Arizona's probably going to put up enough points and then beat them. I don't see Philadelphia beating Arizona, even in Philly. The next game they have is against the Redskins, and as I predicted earlier, I predict the Redskins will lose that game in Philadelphia, and that will almost wrap up the division for the Eagles, because they'll have won 2 of 3, one of them been against an NFC opponent, and they'll have the head-to-head record, head-to-head edge over the Redskins. Now, the final game is at New York against the Giants. I believe they will actually lose this game because I think the Giants are going to be trying to win the game. Because think about it. The way that this is set up, I believe that if the Redskins were to win any of their games, like going back, if they were to beat the Bears, they could potentially have a tiebreaker edge over the Eagles, something along those lines. But the way that I look at it, this game in New York, the Giants are definitely going to want to beat their rivals. It's a rivalry game. Eagles and Giants is one of the best rivalries in all of sports. Philadelphia versus New York. You know that they're going to want to bring it. Now, the final team, of course, is the New York Giants. As it stands right now, they go to Miami, which I think will be a win because the Dolphins at home this year have not been very good. If you look at the way they've played, the Dolphins have blown games. They've been horrible at home against the Bills, against the Jets, against the Cowboys. They lost at home. I think the Giants could be another team to go in there and take advantage of their 22nd ranked pass defense and 27th total defense and get some points through the air. The next thing they'll be doing is they'll be hosting the Carolina Panthers, the undefeated Panthers. Carolina can say all they want, they're not going for the undefeated season. They're not just going to roll over and take a loss so they don't have any pressure in the playoffs. They're going to win that game. Carolina's going to win that game. So that makes the Giants 1-1 from this point, which would send them to 6-8. Then they go to Minnesota, which I believe will be a loss because Minnesota is very good at running the football, and the Giants have a decent run defense, but it's really not going to be enough, I think, to hold back Adrian Peterson, because come December, Adrian Peterson gets his engine going. So I'm going with the Vikings on that one. And then home against the Eagles, I think that they'll get the win in that game just because of the fact that it's a division rival, and again, big rivalry game. So the way it's going, I have the Eagles and the Giants at 7-9, and the Redskins at 6-10. That eliminates Washington as a potential NFC East champion, and also, due to tiebreakers, that gives the NFC East to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, going through the schedule, it's easy to pick out the games and say, I think this team will win this and that and this and that, and say, by that nature, the Eagles should win the division. That's a very easy thing to do. But what needs to be said is this. If I were to pick the team right now that I think top to bottom has the best chance of winning the division based on just the team itself and not the schedule, I would probably go with the Giants. And the reason why is this. Because, yes, I know they've had struggles on defense this year. They have not really been able to do much of anything. And particularly stopping the pass, because if you look at the way certain teams have carved them up, like the Saints carving them up, Brees 7 touchdowns, Tom Brady carving them up, Ryan Fitzpatrick carving them up, and they're not getting after the quarterback either. 15 sacks by the defense. And they're not running the football either. I mean, at this point, the two things that they do have going for them are Eli Manning and Odell Beckham Jr. That's pretty much it. If you look at the rest of the team, kind of pedestrian. The pass defense is not very good. The run defense, it's not terrible, but it could be a lot better. But ultimately, they rank 31st in defense, and that's going to be tough to overcome. Because the Eagles, albeit I have said enough about the Eagles and how they've played defense this year, Philadelphia is 26th in defense, which is an improvement. And Washington is 21st. So if anything, Washington would have the most solid defense on paper. But what I think needs to be said is the fact the Giants have something that the Eagles and Redskins don't, and that's a 2-time Super Bowl champion quarterback. And that Eli Manning, as horrid as he's played in some moments this year, is still having a fairly good year. He's completing 62% of his passes, 24 touchdowns, only 10 picks, not really bad. QBR 62, passer rating 91.6. And again, Odell Beckham Jr. He's 78 catches, over 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. I'll tell you this. The way that it's going right now, the Giants have the best star power in terms of Super Bowl championships, Super Bowl pedigree amongst their rosters. Because here's the thing about it. They've got some guys in that team that were on the last Super Bowl champion, such as Jason Pierre-Paul, such as Eli Manning. I believe Mark Herzlich was another one. I believe he was. I'm not too sure. Those are the kind of guys that you want in your key positions as the season goes on. The Eagles, I do not believe, have anybody on their roster that has been to a Super Bowl. And you look at the Redskins, they've got less experience because a lot of their team is younger. So looking at it on paper, based on just the team, The team that I would predict to win the NFC based on the schedule would be the Eagles. But if I had to pick a team from my gut based on what they can do in terms of personnel, I'd have to go with the Giants. The reason why I really don't like the Redskins is because there's no real one particular way this team could hurt you. With the Eagles, they can speed up the tempo of the game. They can play some solid defense if they have to in terms of take turnovers and sacks. The Giants have Eli Manning who can just dissect you. Kirk Cousins is not going to go out there and tear you apart. They're not going to run the ball down your throat. So yeah. If anything, I predict that the Eagles are probably going to win this based on record, but I predict that the Giants will win the division based on personnel.